Okay, so now in this particular lesson, what we're going to do is show you how to make that kind of conversion like we did with the M&Ms at the beginning of the molar mass video, where we take a mass of something and we convert it into how many of something we have without actually counting. And so it's called a conversion, and we're going to use the mole to do it. Remember, 1 mole is the molar mass. This comes right off the periodic table in grams of a compound. It is also 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles of any compound, or I should say element. Should also say element. It just depends on what you're dealing with. So you can use these two conversions because the mole connects them. The mole is the guiding principle here. To convert between grams of something, I can weigh a sample and I can know how many particles I've got floating around in that sample. And everything reacts in terms of particles or atoms or molecules. Everything reacts in terms of that. To do this as a conversion factor, what you want to remember is you want to always put a 1 by the word mole. You may remember that when we were doing the metric system, I told you guys a little hint to make it easier is to put a 1 in front of the unit that had 2 letters. So 1 millimeter, 1 kiloliter, whatever it was. Here, my clue is 1 in front of the word mole. Okay? So once you understand the concept, it's not that bad. So we're going to start some math again. If you remember, we always start by writing down the number and the unit. And you can abbreviate moles as MOL. You cannot abbreviate it as M. That's meter. So you want to make sure you do MOL or MOLE. Okay? We're going to put the word mole on the bottom. And then we're going to see what they want me to put on top. That would be grams on top. My hint that I gave you on the previous slide said always put a 1 by the word mole. Wherever it says grams, you're going to use the periodic table. So I want you to look up copper. You're going to write 63.5 grams. Because that's run on the periodic table. The word moles cancels out, and what you're going to do is multiply those two numbers. And you get 97, and I'm going to round it to 97.2 grams, because I have 3 sig figs here and 3 sig figs here. And don't forget units, grams. Okay? So it's a lot like what we were doing before. It's throwing at something weird that you've never seen before is the word mole. Okay, that's why we practice all that metric stuff, because it's stuff that you're maybe not as comfortable with, but the whole idea of a conversion, get yourself comfortable with it, because when you start to see weird things like the word mole, maybe it'll be a little easier to make that kind of a transition. Okay, now if I wanted to do the number of atoms, I'm going to start with 1.53 moles, and again, start with the number and the unit. I'm going to put the word mole on the bottom. But this time I don't want to know how many grams. I want to know how many atoms or how many particles. If you wanted to write particles with a P, that's okay too. Again, the conversion is you put a 1 by the word mole. But when you have a conversion where it says atoms, you're not using the mass because it doesn't want grams. You're going to use Avogadro's number, 6.02 e to the 23rd. Ooh, e to the 23rd. Let's try again. 23. There we go. Okay, moles cancels out. And you're going to multiply these numbers. Now, you may not remember how to type this in on your calculator because it's been a while. So you would type in 1.53 times 6.02. Remember, on a graphing calculator, it's the second button and then a comma. Should pop up a little e, and then you type in 23. And you should end up with 9.21. And again, 3 sig figs, e to the 23rd particles, or atoms. Okay? So, a couple of things to watch out for. Word mole, to cancel out, always put a 1 by the word mole. Atoms on top. When it's atoms, it's this Avogadro's number thing. Okay? Multiplying this, it's 1.53 times 6.02. Use the exponent button. Don't use the times 10 raised to button. And then watch for sig figs and don't forget units. And if you notice, my numbers are the same here, but I converted to 2 completely different things, and that's what the mole allows you to do. So let's see if you guys can stop the movie and try this one. All right, we're going to start with writing 150 grams. We put grams in the bottom to cancel out, and they want moles on top. 1 mole, I'm going to look up copper, that's Cu, is 63.5. Numbers are on the bottom, you may not remember, you divide. So I have 150 divided by 63.5, and again, 3 sig figs. This has 4, this only has 3. So 2.36 moles. Okay, let's try this one. Starting with the atoms, 8.35 e to the 23rd atoms. So atoms on the bottom, moles are what you want on top, put a 1 by the word mole. Atoms is going to get 6.02 e to the 23rd. Now here's where it's really important to use the exponent button properly, because 8.35 second comma, second e, 23 divided by 6.02, do it again, second comma, or the double E button, and you will get 1.39 moles. And again, I'm looking at 3 sig figs because that has 3 sig figs. Okay, but pay attention to how you do that on your calculator, because that is really kind of a big trick to remember. So, since 1 mole is how many particles you have, and 1 mole is how many grams you have, guess what you can use the mole to do? You can change from grams to particles and particles to grams. So I'm going to start with this, 2.25 e to the 23rd second particles, and I'm going to abbreviate it as a p, particles on the bottom, moles on top, even though it's not mentioned, because you always have to go to moles first. Always. Always. Put a 1 by the word mole, 6.02 e to the 23rd. Particles cancels out, and if I were to stop right now, I would have how many moles I have. But I don't want that. Okay, what it did is it changed from particles to moles. Now I'm going to take the moles and I'm going to change that into grams, and I'm just going to continue the calculation. I'm going to put moles on the bottom this time, so it will cancel out. I'm going to put a 1 next to the word mole, and I'm going to put grams on top. Moles will cancel out. Grams come from the periodic table. So I'm going to have you look this up. Remember how we did molar mass? And when I add up PB and then 2 N's and 6 O's, I get 331.2. And so to solve this problem, I'm going to type in this number, and I'm going to remember that I need to do the exponent part properly. The double E button, divided by 6.02, again, the double E button, 23, and then I'm going to multiply by 331.2. Numbers on the top multiply, numbers on the bottom divide, and I get an answer of 12.4 grams. And again, 3 sig figs here, 3 sig figs here. This has 4. My answer can only have 3. Okay, let's try one more. 75.3 grams. Grams on the bottom. Always go to moles first. Put a 1 by the word mole. We added this up in our video on molar mass, and when I added that up, I got 342. Grams cancels out. You're going to put the word mole on the bottom, and now you're putting particles on top. Put a 1 by the word mole. Anytime you have particles in a conversion, 6.02 e to the 23rd, moles cancel out. So now you're going to do 75.3 divided by 342 times 6.02 e to the 23rd. Oh heavens, what did I just do? Let's try that again. 75.3 divided by 342 times 6.02 e to the 23rd. And I get 1.33, 3 sig figs. But I want to make sure, if I'm doing particles, I want to make sure I include that exponent part. Sometimes people have a tendency to forget that. Okay? There's a huge difference between 1.33 and 1.33 e to the 23rd. Enormous difference. So make sure you include that when you're doing these conversions. Okay? I'm just going to pull these up here. I'm not much of a joke teller, so I'm just going to pull these up here if you guys want to look at them. Okay, so enough of the jokes.